So many new pieces to this IU football team.
To me, that's going to set the tone on how you get ready for games on Saturday in the fall.
I would put that Indiana room up against anybody else in the conference, and that's something that we typically don't even come close to saying.
If you want to get total sickos committee about it, there's a position battle at long snapper too.
This is the Hoosier Huddle Podcast, part of the College Huddle Podcast Network.
Good evening and welcome to the Hoosier Huddle Podcast. I'm Sammy Jacobs. Along with me is TJ Inman and Alex Compton as we continue our 2024 Indiana football season previews. Today, we're doing the big season preview. We'll go over our expectations for Coach Cignetti and the Hoosiers in year one. We'll do a schedule breakdown. We'll give MVPs on each side of the ball, a bold prediction, talk about the game day changes that were announced today on IUHoosiers.com, and then where to watch your games when the Hoosiers are on the road or to pregame before home games. So welcome to the show, guys. How are we doing?
Doing well. It's 10 days out, I think, now. So we're recording this on Wednesday evening for those of you that are going to listen later in the week or on the weekend. It's officially week 0. It's officially college football time. I've seen some funny, memes and stuff on Twitter of, guys informing their significant others that they will see them again in the spring. So I think it's that time for a lot of us, and really excited to be talking IU football and the schedule. I think it's if it wasn't go time already, it is now.
Yep, definitely fired up, ready to go. We got a game Saturday between Florida State and Georgia Tech as a little warm-up, tune-up event for us fans to get acclimated to college football being on our televisions, thankfully, once again. And then Indiana, the real thing for us that next Saturday afternoon. So ready to go. Excited for this season preview. Let's get going.
Did you skip over Delaware State and Hawaii, TJ, in week 0?
I did. Yeah, I did.
You went right to the big game. I would argue that Delaware State Hawaii is
that's true. Can't forget the Blue Hens.
That's right.
All right, let's get right down to business. Indiana starts the season on Saturday, August 31st against Florida International. It is a new era in Bloomington with Curt Cignetti taking over for Tom Allen, who was fired at the end of last year. Indiana spent a ton of money to get Allen out. I believe it was around $15 million to buy out the rest of his contract. You also had to bring Coach Cignetti in, buy out all the assistants that went with Allen as well. There have been massive game day changes, which we'll talk about later. But let's talk about expectations for Curt Cignetti in year one. At media days, he said, we don't expect to be 10th. It's bullshit. We want to be the best. That's great. That's the attitude everybody wants to have. But let's see what the expectations are for the fans to give them a base of reality to where, if they lose a game during the season, it's not full meltdown, basketball board mode. So we'll start with you, TJ. What are your expectations for Curt Cignetti? Indiana's done a lot to change the attitude and, atmosphere around the football program.
Yeah. So I think it's important to kind of delineate expectations versus limitations. I'm not saying here's what I expect, and I think that's the best they could possibly do. That's not the case. I'm not putting a ceiling on this team necessarily. Now, do I think that IU is capable, even if they play their absolute best every single game? Do I think that IU is capable of making the college football playoff? I do not. Not this year. Do I think that Indiana is capable of winning 8 or 9 games if everything falls into place and they play their best? Yeah, I do. Now, what is the expectation? I think a lot of that gets made by your schedule. For a program like Indiana, the schedule can make or break what you are capable of in a season. And IU's schedule fairly favorable, especially compared to what we are kind of used to. My hope and baseline expectation for this team is that Indiana makes a bowl game, beats Purdue. That always has to be thrown in there. Makes a bowl game, beats Purdue, and then I would like to see Indiana break that streak and get a bowl victory. So I think that would leave you with the winning record. I think that would leave you with the win over Purdue. So you've got the bucket and you break the bowl losing streak and get into the win column in a bowl game. For me, that's the baseline. Meeting that, I'm really happy. Exceeding that, I'm, running naked in the streets. And anything short of that, we're going to have to see, what conditions played out to make that not happen.
Yeah. We'll go with you, Alex.
Yeah, I think for me, it's not record as much. I think you want to be above 500, of course. We always want that. You want to win every game. Every game we lose sucks. But for me, you just, after all the talk, all the momentum, all the buildup, seems like a lot of really, really good changes, kind of a departure from probably the past two eras, honestly. You got to get some positive momentum going and you got to finish the season strong. You can't come out and lay a 4-8 egg. You can't, win one game in the Big Ten. You got to show that you've established kind of a system on both sides of the ball. I think that's one thing we haven't seen. It's kind of been helter-skelter on offense and defense for the last kind of 3 seasons, I would say. So you got to come out, show you have an identity on both sides of the ball. I think not only should that help you win games you're supposed to win and be competitive in those games we typically haven't been competitive in, but it also helps you sell the vision to portal guys. That will be a topic of conversation probably 3 months from now. The portal will be rearing again. So you have to have a vision for that. You have to be able to show guys, this is a year on tape. This is how we would use you. This is why we need you. That I think is critical. And then, you need to build some momentum. And I think this is an older roster. And I think that's by design for Coach Cignetti and his staff this year to just get off the ground okay. And then I think getting off the ground okay really allows you to recruit that 25, 26 classes, I should say, harder and kind of how you want to, rather than just taking guys that are interested. I think you can go after some guys that, probably larger programs are interested in as well. So for me, it's just establish an identity on both sides of the ball. We've heard the new culture. That's great. You gotta show it. You gotta play like it, which Coach Cignetti has said a couple times. And then you got to finish with momentum. I think we've seen some streaks and some okay things the last, half decade, whatever you want to call it. But you got to finish the season strong. And I think that's been a challenge.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you guys, not saying that there's a specific record, but there's definitely some boxes that I have that need to be checked. The first one, you have to have a winning record at home. You've got 8 home games for the first time in a long time. Your 3 non-conference games should be wins at home. You also are bringing in Maryland, who's going through transition. You're bringing in Washington, who's going through transition. Nebraska, who's starting a freshman at quarterback, is coming in. Michigan, again, another team in transition. And then Purdue, who is not expected to be great this year. If you could go 5-3 or 6-2 and take care of bowl eligibility just at home, you'll be – that to me is, now it's not only great record, but fans come to expect to win at home, and it's a little bit more fun. Second thing on my checklist, and this is kind of like the video game, right? Your coaching hot seat stuff. Win your trophy games. Michigan State is on the road this year, but they're a team that Indiana's split the last 4 games with them, and both of them have been on the road.
Yep.
So does that pattern continue? Can you win a road game in November up at Spartan Stadium? And then Purdue at home, that's a game you always have to win. And I know Kirk's, Coach Cignetti wants to do more than just beat Purdue and get to a bowl game, but they are your biggest rival, your in-state rival. You recruit against them in-state, and I think he might not know he needs to talk to Mark Deal about the importance of this rivalry. He might not know just the impact it has, and maybe it'll take the Boilermaker Special coming down 17th Street and blowing its horn to make him realize just how big this rivalry is. But win that game and then get to the postseason. It is a high bar to jump over as a first-year coach at IU. The only coach I remember coming in and being semi-successful was Bill Lynch, and that was a one special year and done type of thing. Kevin Wilson came in, went 1-11. Tom Allen had 2 5-7 seasons. Coach Hepp went, I think, 4-7. You had DiNardo and all those going back. Even Bill Mallory came in and I think went 0-11 his first year. So to come in and get to the postseason and get to a bowl game and win that bowl game, you're going to change a lot of things around. So that's on my checklist, and those are the expectations. Also, just have a functional team. We're no delay of games on the opening kickoff of the season. No timeouts coming out of a timeout on a TV timeout. Look prepared, be prepared. Just look like a functional outfit, which Indiana football did not look like from, basically the last 5 minutes of the Gator Bowl until the end of the 2023 bucket game. And they have sometimes in 2020 where they look like they had it together and turned it around. But for more times than not, since the last 5 minutes of the Gator Bowl, things kind of started spiraling and falling apart. So let's do our schedule breakdown.
Another one in there quickly.
Yeah,
I would another one for me. Could this just be fun? I think both for the team and the fan. I think you could tell the players have been really tight the last couple seasons, and I think the fans have been very on edge and tight, which I understand. I am too during the games. Like you probably don't want to watch an IU football game with me, but I mean, it's supposed to be fun. Like when you're at the game, it's fun to stand on third down. It's fun to high five people you don't know when you score. Like it's okay to win and to have fun. And I think both on the fan side, both in person and online, and then the team side, I think it's supposed to be fun. And you're supposed to celebrate when you make plays, and you're supposed to celebrate when you win games. I don't care who you're playing. We saw that last year. It's hard to win, and it's supposed to be fun. Like I want the team to have fun winning, obviously, but I want to just play loose and exciting and fast football instead of this tight, scared to mess up crap, because we saw how that works and it doesn't. So that's my challenge to people at the game. I'll be at the opener, which I know we'll talk about in a second. I'll be the guy you have to tell to sit down on third down. But if you're mad at me for standing on third down at the home opener for a new coach, I would challenge you to look at yourself in the mirror a little bit. So it should be fun. I want it to be fun.
Yeah. Insert the Coach Boone from, Remember the Titans gif in there. Football's not fun anymore. Alex, didn't you get the message? Zero fun.
It hasn't been, but I'm choosing to believe it will be now. Yeah.
No, and especially for the students, you get whatever, maybe 25 home games, 30 at the most. Enjoy it. They go by quick. Let's do the schedule breakdown. As we mentioned earlier, there are no more divisions in the Big Ten. You're out of the Big Ten East. You do draw Ohio State and Michigan again, but they're at the end of the year. You don't open with them, and you get a bye week in between. 2024 is one of those odd years, the leap year, where you have however many weekends before or after Labor Day. So there is that extra bye week in there, which I think is helpful. But, you get 8 home games, 4 on the road. One of those road games is at Northwestern. You go at UCLA as well, and then at Ohio State and at Michigan State. let's just break this schedule down between non-conference, those first 6 games, and then the back half of the schedule.
Yeah,
So
non-conference, I give credit to whoever set the schedule, if that's Scott Dolson, if that was Tom Allen playing a part in that earlier, if that was somebody else in the athletic department, I give that person credit for setting this non-conference schedule because it actually makes sense.
Yep.
It's the non-conference schedule Indiana should be scheduling. It doesn't mean you automatically go 3-0. You have to go out there and play the games. You have to play well, and you have to get the wins. But this is much better than, for instance, what Purdue is doing. This makes way more sense. This makes way more sense than playing Louisville. Okay? So I give credit to the decision makers that put this non-conference schedule in place that gives you a very good opportunity to go 3-0. That's what you're looking for. I think Florida International, perfect opener. They're a competent team. They have good athletes.
Yep.
But it's a game that if you play well, you should have it pretty much sewn up heading into the fourth quarter and giving yourself a chance to develop that depth. Okay. Western Illinois, very bad FCS team in the past couple seasons. Very
literally
bad.
The worst football
Yes.
team in Division One.
Right. They may have improved quite a bit, and they'll still be very bad.
They haven't.
Okay. So that game gives you a chance to have it be done by halftime competitively. And again, develop that depth. Charlotte, interesting program. I think that they will be the biggest challenge out of the 3. But that's a game you should be somewhat comfortably winning at home. So I like the non-conference schedule for those purposes. One, it should be 3-0, and if it's not, there's larger problems. And then 2, it gives you a chance, if you play well, to get that depth into the game and develop it for later on in the season. Like that quite a bit. Now, the first 3 Big Ten games before that bye week at UCLA, that's a toss-up game. I think we don't know a lot about what UCLA is going to be under Deshaun Foster, new offensive coordinator, and Eric Bieniemy. We'll dive into that specifically for that game week and kind of the details on them once we get a little bit of an idea of what does UCLA look like. That's a toss-up game. It's in a cool atmosphere, obviously. That's a good opportunity. It's a good early season opportunity for Indiana on the road. Maryland at home, always competitive between them. Maryland's going to have a new quarterback. They're going to look a lot different than they did under Tagovailoa. That's a toss-up at Northwestern. Unique environment, playing on the lake, small stadium. Northwestern overachieved last season, I think, by pretty much any metric. Do they have some regression? Yeah, probably. But still, that's a road game in the Big Ten against a very competent opponent. That's another toss-up. So you've got a chance in those first 6 games to probably worst case scenario be 3-3. And if that's all you get out of those first 6 games, you're in trouble headed down the backstretch. So you got to be aiming for 4-2 or better.
Or better. Yeah, that's, going into that, and, I forgot about the UCLA game. That if you could split the UCLA and Northwestern road trips,
right,
you're in good shape. And then, we'll see what Maryland is coming into that game. But again, to my point earlier, you have to win your home games. You've got 8 of them this year. You could take care of bowl eligibility without even leaving Memorial Stadium. So then, you hit that bye week after Northwestern?
Yes.
Yep. Before
and
homecoming.
Then we bring in, before homecoming, which brings me to that third chunk of games, which is Nebraska at home, Washington at home, Michigan, and what's the road trip in there? At Michigan State?
State.
At Michigan State, then Michigan, yeah.
So at Michigan State and Michigan at home, those you don't know what those teams are yet. Yeah, Nebraska has a lot of hype coming in with Dylan Raiola, but they haven't been to a bowl game since 2016, which is kind of ridiculous for them. And I know Alex is ready to talk all the smack to his brother about that and all that stuff. But you look at Washington, who knows what they're going to be? They lose a ton. This is the unknown part of the schedule to me. And if you could go, 4 games between then and Ohio State?
Yeah.
Yep.
If you split those at 2-2, man, you're done before you have to go. You've got your 6 wins before going to the second bye week into the horseshoe, and you feel pretty good about yourself. Now, that's all you're asking for is 2-2. If you could go 3-1, or heck, even maybe 4-0 in that stretch, which is not unimaginable. It's as an IU fan, yes, it is unimaginable that everything goes our way. If you're looking at it a game at a time, you might go 3-1 and say, "Hey, Michigan's that automatic."
There you go.
L.
Yeah.
But
I think Michigan, despite their personnel losses, I think that's a pretty screwed on tight operation that I don't see a huge step back for them, and the level of physicality they play with. I don't, at that point in the season, I'm glad IU has a bye week after that Michigan game. I think that comes at a good time, not having to go back to back without a rest between Michigan and Ohio State, and you can kind of recharge your batteries before you take on Purdue.
Yeah, I also like playing Ohio State the week before they play Michigan. Not that all things go well for them. They're 10-0. They've beaten Oregon at the road at that point. At that point, I doubt they're looking ahead, but at that point, if Ohio State wins 10 games and loses out, I don't know how you leave them out of the playoffs. So, maybe they're
going to be looking for a new head coach if they lose out.
Yeah. But I mean, they'd still get in, I think, the playoff. But I think for me, it's like it always seems to come down to for IU. It's those toss-up games that we talked about, and
there's a lot of them.
There are this year, which I think is you hired a new coach and you blew up the infrastructure we had because it was extremely maddening in those toss-up kind of games, like the Marylands of the world, the Rutger of the world, where they've essentially tried to hand you a few of these games and Tom Allen just wouldn't take them. You hope a new competent staff operation, whatever you want to call it, I think just by being more sound in function and technique, these games hopefully slide our way and over time become, ones where the other teams go, oh, I don't really want to play Indiana because they're always just very solid. And I think you look at Maryland, I think just technique and holding onto the ball has usually beaten them in conference play. It's those kind of crazy games or the shootouts where they seem to get you. They also always seem to start really hot and kind of start to wither in the middle and back end of the season. So, we catch them kind of early. So that is a bit of a concern. But, you have 3 essentially true road games. The Northwestern situation is going to be really unique. I'll be there. I know I expect a lot of Indiana fans to be there just with the presence in Chicago. Looking at the pre-bye week, you have FIU, Western, UCLA, Charlotte, Maryland, and Northwestern. I mean, those are not that I'm saying those are games you should all win, but those are games I think the team looks at that schedule and goes, yeah, we can win all of those games. And
that's what he's been talking about all offseason is, your record in 1-score games, they've been so close, and it's there's a lot of talk about it. So let's see if Curt Cignetti and this team can win those close games, which the last few years Indiana has not.
You mentioned fun and exciting. This is a fun, exciting schedule. It is.
Some intriguing matchups, and FIU is a Jeremy Passmore, William Wilkins, I think was his brother. So a couple IU ties. But yeah, I mean, not only have to win the non-conference games, in my opinion, we talked about it on our roster breakdowns the last couple of weeks. I do think IU is very, very thin at a couple key positions. Yeah. So you have to win these, sure. But like we've talked about, you'd like to win them running away. So you are, resting guys heading into that road trip to LA instead of,
and getting some depth guys some run.
Yeah, right. It's critical. It's critical. Like, I think we've totally mismanaged a lot of stuff in the past, but the non-conference games, like we've talked about, have just been terrible. So not only do you need to win them, you need to be healthy, and hopefully you win them by enough of a margin where, you're getting these other guys in the game. I think that's going to be really key for the rest of the schedule.
Yeah, and somebody commented on it that we're like one of the only sites that bring that up. But if you go back to 2017 and 2018, when Tom Allen played all of his young guy recruits, you saw what they became in 2019 and 2020. And then all of a sudden, he stopped playing the depth guys. And you saw what they became in 21, 22, and 23. So the formula's there to do that. Let's move on to the back half of the schedule. The last two games, we talked about the first six, those middle toss-up four, which, TJ, you won't throw Michigan in there. I will. And then the last two, which are, we can't get through an IU football season without a trip to Ohio State, and then the bucket game.
Yeah, Ohio State, look, trips to Columbus are rarely enjoyable for Indiana football. Ohio State, Ohio State might have the most talented roster in the country. Georgia may disagree, but they don't take a back seat to anybody in terms of roster. Mm-hmm. Certainly some, I think, legitimate questions about quarterback, whether or not Will Howard will still be starting by that point. Who knows? But regardless of who they put out at running back, or I'm sorry, at quarterback, that one is a severe long shot for Indiana, and that's okay. Purdue at home, the Boilermakers, their over-under win total last I looked was 4.5. They were projected or picked 18th in the preseason media poll for the Big Ten. Look, they lost their best two players to the transfer portal, Deion Burks and Nick Scourton. I don't think they replaced them with anybody of that caliber. I do not think their lines of scrimmage are that good. I do not think their skill position groups, particularly wide receiver, are that good. I think their defense could be okay. And I think Hudson Card is capable. And the running game could be okay with Reggie Love and Devin Mockabee.
Yeah.
But that's one that, as of right now, and it's a super long time before that game, so who knows what both teams will be health-wise. Who knows what they'll be on the field. I mean, we don't know yet. But as of right now, I would feel confident in Indiana against Purdue. We'll see if it goes that way during the year, but home game against Purdue is one that you need to win. It doesn't really matter what Purdue looks like, what Indiana looks like. You got to get those.
Yep. Yeah, it'd be good to get the bucket for sure.
I mean, just to stop them from talking so much. And yeah, I get IU fans talk too and all that stuff. And sometimes I do side with the Purdue fans, but it's like, let's re-enter the chat in this rivalry and get one back. We haven't had the bucket since 2019. Probably would have won it in 2020 had it not been canceled due to COVID. And then, Purdue has basically hammered you the last 3 years under Allen. You had a shot last year, blew a 12-point, 18-point lead or something, 10-point lead heading into the fourth quarter.
Let's move on.
cherry on
Yeah.
top of that era for me. That was a perfect summation of many of
Indeed
the
it
issues
was.
we had seen. Yeah.
Yep.
I
All
got
right,
a
let's move on to
quickly.
Yeah.
A quick question.
Yep.
Let's say no Purdue game. Which game do you think is the most important game for Indiana to win on the schedule?
The first one. I know that sounds like a sarcastic answer, and it might be, but the first game, I think the first game is the most important one. You gotta change the narrative a little bit, and
Yeah.
if you come out and beat FIU 24-21, people are going to be like, well, this saying all this talk from Curt Cignetti, and we could barely beat FIU. And people don't realize FIU against Kevin Wilson's team was going in for the tying score when I think it was Andre Brown had a 97-yard pick six. You had some close games down there where the defense needed to bail you out under Tom Allen and Kevin Wilson. So this is not a slouch FIU team. They're if you let them hang around, they'll hang around and they'll beat you. But yeah, to me, it's the first game.
I think that's a very valid answer in the interest of choosing something slightly different. I'll go with Maryland. Big Ten home opener. I feel like if you assume, which is a very dangerous thing to do, but if you assume that Indiana takes care of business against FIU, Western Illinois, and Charlotte and loses to UCLA, I think that would be okay. That's a fine start. Not great because we lost to UCLA, but fine. 3-1, that's fine. And then you got Maryland coming in at home.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty big pivot between 4-1 and 3-2. And Maryland's one of the matchup opponents that you've got in the Big Ten. So I think that'll be an interesting one and important. I mean, all these toss-up games are important, and each one that you win kind of lessens the pressure on the next one. If you lose, ratchets that notch up and reduces your margin for error. So that's the way it goes. We're no surprise to that. I'm excited to talk about this next one. We're talking about offense, defense, special teams, players to watch.
Or MVP or MVPs. We'll go MVP.
A lot of options, man. A lot of options. So, Alex, if you want to start with offensive player to watch or MVP, kind of somebody you want to highlight on that side of the ball.
Yeah, it's got to be – I'll take the easy answer to start, but it's got to be Curtis Rourke for me. I think we talked about it's an old roster by design. You'd want to get off to a good start, not only season-wise, but kind of long-term program trajectory-wise. That's why you bring a guy like that in. We've talked about it in our roster breakdowns. He's been one of the only guys that's been getting kind of, positive, glaring public reviews from Coach Cignetti. So it's got to be him. I think you saw flashes of Brendan Sorsby that you liked. Obviously, he's, whatever he was doing at the end of the season, if that's true or not. But either way, he's at Cincinnati. I think Rourke is a better player if you had to pick, this season. Obviously, Sorsby's younger, but I think you're happy you have Rourke on the roster. But you just want consistent quarterback play. And for someone that was, as critical of Peyton Ramsey at times like I was, you miss a guy like that was just very steady, distributed the ball, leader, seemed to always kind of make the big play when you needed it instead of the defense making a big play. So for me, it's got to be Rourke if you want to get to where you want to get to, like we just talked about when we walked through the schedule. If Rourke's not your guy, I think you're in trouble. So I'll take the easy answer, but it's got to be Rourke for me.
Yep, I think that's the right answer. The player that I'll highlight to be different, because I do think it's really critical. I could get cute and say Carter Smith, but I don't know enough about offensive line play to pretend that I do. So Elijah Surratt, I think that his importance emerging as a true number one wide receiver, if he can be what you hope he can, I think that kind of helps out everyone else in the offense into a really good role for them. I think it would help Donovan McCulley into being a really good number 2. And if the defenses have to focus on Surratt and McCulley can just get single coverage consistently, I think you feel really good about that. And I think he would feel really good about that. Yeah. It would help Miles Price in a natural slot receiver role. So I think that it would help the offense flow better with everybody in a natural role if Surratt can be your, hey, this is the guy that defenses are forced to pay attention to, because if they don't, he's going to catch 9 or 10 passes, for 80 or 90 yards and score a touchdown. And if he can stay healthy and be that for Indiana, I think it helps the rest of the players in that wide receiver room. So I think Rourke's the correct answer, because you've got to have that leader on offense that can stir the drink.
I'll take the wild card answer. I think Miles Price is the most important player on offense. We've seen it the last couple of years. There have been too many of the same types of players in the wide receiver room on offense. And Miles Price gives you that, Shane Wynn, Whop Philyor guy who you could get the ball to in space, who you really wish Jalen Lucas would have been. But you could use him on reverses. You could use him on the little pop pass. You could use the Outback Bowl playbook and throw it to him 22 times, like you did with Whop Philyor. But he's the guy, when IU's offense is really good with Kalen DeBoer and Tom Allen and Nick Sheridan, it was because they had a player like a Whop Philyor who could go across the middle, make the tough catches, outrun the defense. And I think Miles Price, after a couple of years of not having that, brings that to the offensive room, to where if he goes down, I think it would be a bigger loss than maybe losing some of these other guys that you could stick an EJ Williams in or an Omar Cooper in, because he has that unique speed.
Yeah.
But you guys left me no choice.
That's a good choice. Yeah, it's a good choice.
Let's switch.
Just a chain mover. Yep.
Yeah, let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. I'll go first. I think it's CJ West. It's the most important part in the player to watch, or MVP of that defense. Just because he's a space eater, he can make plays. He'll free up, the rest of the defensive line to make plays, free up the linebackers, and him coming in made you feel. The impact he had when he committed to Indiana was that you went from a major concern, like, oh my God, what are they going to do at defensive tackle, to, okay, now they have their answer as a starter, and they brought in some depth behind him. Alex, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, West is a good one, I think. Gosh, since probably Ralph Green or Darius Latham, you really haven't had a true kind of a people eater at defensive tackle, at least, unless I'm forgetting a couple. But that I think is a big add. Shout out to Ralph Green, but I think that's a good one. For me, it's been a problem for these teams the last couple of years, and that's pass rush production. And I think, when I look at this defense, again, I like the starters at a lot of spots. Depth is where I get a little concerned about, especially in the secondary. So one way to help the secondary is to get pressure on the quarterback. So for me, it's Mikhail Kamara, who has gotten, again, similar praise to Rourke, I think, is one of those JMU transplants that's not only, going to be expected to produce, but also kind of help change this culture here. They like him for his versatility. They like him for his pass rush ability. Productive player last year. For me, he's got to be one that you look at and you go, yeah, I'm glad we brought him along. He had a productive season. So he's going to play a ton of snaps. So ready or not for the Big Ten, I think is a big question with a lot of those kind of transfers. He's going to be one for me that's going to be critically important to stay on the field, one, and then produce, two. So for me, that's a big one. You could throw Mangum Farrar in there, I think, similarly for me. I like Linnell Carr because I think I know what I'm going to get from Linnell Carr.
Yeah.
He was
which
their
is
best pass rusher last year.
which is very solid production. So I love having Carr back. I think he's going to have a great season. But those other two edges, if you will, I think are more important just because I don't know what we're going to get.
And shout out to Linnell Carr's dad, always commenting on our stuff and our show. So we know we give Linnell Carr Jr. A little love on this show. But yeah, let's TJ, what's your pick?
Yeah, I think obviously pass rush is something that needs to step up. Carr, JMF, both options there. Kamara, hopefully Vincent Sneed maybe can jump up in there, get you a couple sacks. But I think the two guys that I'm torn between would be D'Angelo Pons as hopefully a shutdown corner. I'll go with the guy that Curt Cignetti and Bryant Haynes both seem to adore, and they've called him the quarterback of the defense. He's probably going to be IU's leading tackler if he stays healthy. I know that tackles are apparently not all that important if you look at what impacts winning, and linebackers aren't all that. But whatever. I think a really good linebacker that's a true leader in the defense in the middle of it, I still think that's really important. So I'm going to go with Fisher. I think that Aiden Fisher is a potential all Big Ten linebacker. Not first team, because I think there's some, returning studs at that position, but I think he can make an all Big Ten team. And just with the headset rules coming into play inside the helmets, that's the guy wearing that for Indiana is going to be Fisher. Coaches talk about how good he is instinctually, how well he understands scheme and the opposing scheme, how much he studies, and how good of a leader he is. Plus, he's really talented. So I'm going to go with him on that. We switched to special teams. I think we have to take place kicker, don't we? Who's that going to be?
It sounds like they're going to use
McCormick.
Two of them.
It does.
No, that's not what he said.
I know.
He said the other
one
day,
for long and one for short.
Yeah, McCormick's a kickoff guy, and I think they're going to use Nico on the shorter guy, and McCormick on the long field goals, which makes sense.
Yeah. So if we can't choose a position of kicker, if we have to choose an actual individual, then I guess you have to go with the punter, right? I mean,
if you need a field goal to beat FIU, we're in trouble. Then James Evans is your MVP.
Yeah. If you have to go with an individual, because Curt Cignetti does not seem particularly concerned about returns, kickoffs or punts. He feels like they've got a trio of guys that can do it. They're interchangeable, and he said before he doesn't really think kickoff return is something that happens all that much anyway. So I don't think it's going to be an emphasis for Indiana. We'll see, but no matter how good your offense is, you're going to have to punt some. And if you can pin your opponent deep and flip the field and rely on that directional punting and just length and height of a punt to give your coverage team time to get down there and get in good position, if you can rely on that from Evans, as you can, I mean, he's proven that, that's a valuable weapon to have.
Yeah, let's
I would just, for sake of being, I think if Miles Price is your punt returner, which sounds like he may be, he was productive at Texas Tech. I think having another
all conference guy.
Yeah, having another weapon, I think, would be good. We've seen, in my opinion, terrible punt coverage and reception. Just lack of discipline, wrong guys out there.
You'll just be better if you don't have a walk-on behind your first guy.
Just be competent in the punt return and punt kicking game. It helps a lot. It helps a lot. So I think that's a big one. So,
all right. Let's get the bold predictions. TJ, we'll start with you.
Yeah. So Indiana's offense last season, and you have to take things in context, Indiana's offense last season ranked, just had this pulled up, 105th in scoring offense, 22.2 points per game, 105th in the country. My bold prediction is Indiana increases their points per game by 10 points per game, which would put Indiana at 32.2 points per game. And for context, that would put the Hoosiers at number 31 as of last season's offensive numbers. That would put them right at where Toledo was, right at where just a tick below Missouri. So I'm putting Indiana increasing points per game production by 10 points per game, which, if the numbers from last season would translate, would put them up at a top 35, top 40 offense nationally. It's a big jump forward, and it would certainly, require some very strong performances, and your numbers can be goosed some if you go out in the non-conference and put up, 70 against Western Illinois or something. That skews things. But overall, I think the offense will be a significant improvement, and to put a number on it, 10 points per game average up for Indiana. That would be a bold improvement for the Hoosiers, but I do think it's doable thanks to the coaching staff improvements, the scheme, which I think is a lot better, and the personnel improvements, which I think has been upgraded across the board.
All right, with that, we will say goodnight to TJ. Thanks for joining us, as always.
Yeah, game week pod next week, fellas. I'm excited for it. We'll get rolling. I'll let you guys carry this home.
Yep, we have a special guest for next week, too. We'll get into that. But Alex and I, we're going to carry it home with our bold predictions and update you on the game day experience changes, which is our labor of love. What's your bold prediction?
It's a big one. Yeah, you and I, it's a big one. For me, it's tough to say. I'm trying to not do like the big schedule ones. I think offensively and defensively, I think you see a big turnaround in turnover margin for Indiana, which is something that has kind of slipped the last couple of years. I think last year we were 103rd in the country in turnover margin. I think IU ends up like plus 10 to 15 in the turnover margin in a positive way this year. I think you're going to see an offense that values the ball much more, is a lot more calculated with their shots, knows when to take the shots. And I think on defense, you'll see a much more aggressive style of play, especially if the offense can move the ball. You can pin the opposing offense back a little bit. I think you'll see, a defense attacking more than just being on their heels all game. So that would be a combined one for me. A super, super bold take that is very Kool-Aid-y to me. I think you're going to lose a couple of those crap toss-up games that at the end you're just fuming about. I think whoever is the coach, I think you're going to have that with Indiana football for the next couple of years. But for me, I actually think my boldest prediction is that you go 2-0 against the teams that were in the national championship game last year. So I see you beating Michigan and Washington both at home. I just two programs in the midst of a lot of turnover. I know Michigan is ultra physical, ultra athletes, all that good stuff. I do think there are legitimate concerns with their quarterback room. And I think behind Donovan Edwards, I'm not sure, who your guy is kind of on offense. So I think they're gettable, especially at home. And then Washington, I really like Fish. I really like that hire for them. But, totally new system for Will Rogers. Obviously lost a ton of guys to the portal in the draft after a great season last year. So I think both of those teams are really gettable. It's harder now, and we've talked about this as well, to build that kind of depth that just kills you, especially in the end of the season and the second half of games with the portal era. A lot of those guys that would be rotation guys are starting for other schools or smaller schools or whatever. So if I had to throw a really bold one out there, I think you beat both of the teams that were in the national championship game last year. Which if you said that to me in August last year, I would have said you were out of your mind. But that would be a super bold one for me.
Yeah, that is a super bold one. I'm going to go. It's like a two-parter. I think Curtis Rourke finishes top 5 in the Big Ten in passing yards, maybe even top 3. And then I think Indiana finally ends that streak of 1,000-yard receiver. Might be Elijah Surratt. It might be a guy like Miles Price. It could be Donovan McCulley. But they're going to throw the ball, and they have some playmakers to where if one guy's getting double teamed, they're going to, like you said, throw it to the next guy. But I do think Curtis Rourke finishes in the top 5 in the Big Ten in passing yards. That's my bold prediction. And then my not so bold prediction is, fans will melt down as soon as something bad happens, and we'll see. Yeah. But let's get to those fans and the fan experience and game day experience. So things have been leaking out all summer. IU finally announced them all in one release today for new Memorial Stadium additions for the 2024 season. The thing that I'm pumped about is this B-Town Boulevard. I feel like I need royalties for this. I've been saying close off the circle and bring in bring in everything. So Miller Plaza has been transformed into a festival-like atmosphere with the unveiling of B-Town Boulevard. The spaces will open 2.5 hours before kickoff and is open to all ticket holders as well as the general public. The new space will feature a concert stage with live bands, food trucks. Remind me if this sounds familiar. An outdoor bar, family-friendly games, IU team store with IU merchandise and other IU-related attractions. Perfect. Great. Have a good time. I think, even opening it to the general public, you're going to get some people with maybe kids who can't really last the whole game or whatever, where they're still going to spend $25 a person there and maybe not go into the game, which right now is fine. You also have enhanced concessions experience with Levy. It looks like Buffalo's will be there, Yogi's, Social Cantina, Avers Pizza, in addition to some person-to-person concession options and grab and go. So there's they moved the student section. They relocated the rock outside. There's a new stadium tunnel run out, and several other things in there. Alex, what are you most excited about?
Yeah, I think for me, it's been near and dear to my heart to get people to leave the lots and go into the stadium. So I think anything festival-like or noteworthy that's as close to the stadium as possible to lure you in is a big deal for me. So I love the idea of B-Town Boulevard. I think it's cool. I'm going to check it out on the 31st. I think that's great. I think all the new concessions things are great. I think they need to work a lot on the lines and making sure people are ready to take payments and all that stuff, because I know that's been an issue for a lot of people. But it's only as great as you're going to let it be great. So if you're going to have all this new stuff, you still have to make sure all the other stands are staffed properly. There's been lots of instances where the upper level stuff just hasn't been open or haven't had enough staff. It's got to be
concerns. They're now going with a professional vendor who's going to run everything. It seems.
So it's got to be. Buffalo's is great, but if that's the only place that knows how to accept payments or get people through, the line's going to be longer than they've ever been. So unless you still have everything else running well enough and properly, the new stuff's going to be overwhelmed and deliver a terrible experience. So I'm really excited too as a student section guy. I can't wait to see what that looks like. I think it's a great idea to kind of transform that and put everyone in the same area. My dream one day would be to make the north end zone Hankey Hall. I would use that like outdoor area as like a party deck. I think a lot of schools do that where they have stuff for students to hang out in at halftime, take pictures for Instagram, all that kind of stuff. I think that would be one change I would make, is over time, maybe, the top of those sections become no bleachers and more of, concrete for people to stand on and hang out. I think you throw a DJ in there, all that kind of stuff, but really excited to see what that looks like too. But very excited for the Boulevard. I think that's a great idea. We've seen it a couple places on Twitter now, but you now have 4 kind of noteworthy things at each entrance of Memorial Stadium. I think that's really cool. For me, you gotta get people to leave the tailgating lots and go into the game before the game starts. And then you got to give them a reason to stay. So it really does all come back to the team. Underrated thing that I think is also great is there's no more pass outs, so you can't leave the stadium and come back in. I'm real sick of that. So, yeah, I'm really excited for that. For people that are going to complain about that, that's a just extremely common thing now across high level collegiate sports and pro sports. So I'm really excited about that. You're going to spend 3.5 hours on a beautiful day in Bloomington, sitting outside and cheering on your favorite team. You really shouldn't be wanting to leave and go to the car and then come back, because we know what happens when you're going to go out to the car is you're not going to come back. So I think that's kind of a sneaky good change as well. I mean, you're at the game to go to the game. We have to wait 9 months for them to come back every year, and you only get a handful of them. So why not sit there for the game? I think it's great.
Yeah, and it's something that we've been talking about since we started the podcast. Was the pass out should have been the easiest and first thing to go, and if IU really wanted to, you can make a designated smoking area that's kind of gated in but outside. But yeah, pass outs are gone. You're going to have to stay. And look, let's be honest, it also helps with the revenue, and they're going to make you buy their food and beer and all that stuff. And that's part of
I mean, yeah, but it's all good. And it's not like you go to other stadiums, it's $17 for beer. I mean, you can get the good, upland stuff. You can get the domestic
like
stuff.
$8.
There's wine, there's liquor, there's wine, there's, all sorts of stuff. Now you're adding in all this food. It's like, it's supposed to be fun, and you're supposed to go and stay and hang out and buy some stuff. Like that's how it's supposed to be. And everyone's been complaining about it forever, which is definitely warranted. Sammy, you and I were complaining more than most, but now it's here. Now you got to, take advantage of it. So
yeah, now you got people complaining on the other side too. I mean, the other things, relocating Heps Rock outside, we saw, the Oregon Duck, and it's just one of those things that now you have photo opportunities for people, some social media clout and things like that. I agree, having all 4 main entrances have something special is cool. And then just we'll see what the run out tunnel does and stuff like that. Right now, it looks like it's still under construction, but it looks like it's going through the weight room. I don't know if they're going to do it kind of like hockey style, where they have the glass, tunnel, and fans can watch them walk out to the ice and stuff like that. But overall, I think it's a good thing. And then you have your other options too. If you're not into tailgating, if you're a student and want to go to the bars, I know Upstairs Pub, who is, is the place to watch the game now, but only away games. You could go pregame at Upstairs. They have their breakfast club. It looks like that they brought in the scoreboard from the old Assembly Hall. They TV, wall-to-wall TVs, tickers, all that stuff they put up on social media. And then, at away games, go watch the game there. You can come back, read about it, or watch us on the podcast after the game for all your insights. So excited to plug Upstairs.
My favorite place in B-Town to grab a drink. I can't wait. Probably right when I park, when I drive down from Chicago on the 30th. The first thing I will do is probably go to Upstairs, get a couple AMFs, wake up, realize I missed the game and we won 70-0, and then go back to Upstairs, for that night. So I'm excited for that. But
it's definitely changed since I was changed since I was a student.
That's how it goes. But great place. I loved going there as a student. Love going there when I go back. Excited to check out the new renovations and stuff when I head down there next weekend.
All right, final thoughts.
It's here. So appreciate everybody. Hopefully this was a nice hour talking Indiana football. It's my favorite thing to do. it's go time. Lots of new faces, lots of storylines. That's what makes college football great. That's why we love it. In the midst of the portal and the conference realignment and all this, stuff going on. The second I see Indiana football play a game, I forget all about that and just root for them wildly. So first and foremost, I'm just so pumped that it's back. Schedules is fascinating. I think more than it's been in recent years. Non-con you gotta take care of. You hope you win those UCLA Northwestern games. It's time to show what this new era is going to be all about. You hope you get off to a good start. You hope you stay healthy. You hope you win a bajillion games and score a bajillion points. History will tell us that won't be the case. But we'll see. I'm just real excited. I can't wait to get back down there to end August and kick off Labor Day weekend, hopefully with a nice win. We'll get into, I guess, game by game breakdowns now. We'll get real specific on FIU. I know, Sammy, we have some more stuff coming there, but excited to kind of get up to speed on the Panthers here.
Yeah, we have our first glance out at the Panthers as well, and I'll repost all of those when they're all published. But yeah, it's a new era. This feels a lot like spring training or spring when baseball comes around, and hope springs eternal. In this case, hope springs in the fall for IU football fans. I'm excited to see the changes around the program, both on and off the field. Be on the lookout if you're an IU fan in Bloomington. We'll have a man on the ground, ask questions and looking for fan experiences on all that stuff. But overall, I'm just ready to get back to Bloomington in the fall. It's the best time to be down there and to enjoy another football season, to kick off the Curt Cignetti era with the positive win and move on from there. So we'll have guests from Florida International on the next podcast, which is coming up next Thursday. We'll preview that game. We have all our position previews on HoosierHuddle.com. You can follow us at Hoosier_Huddle and, keep coming back, subscribe, tell your friends about us as well. We'll be down in Bloomington in 10 days. All right. Thanks for listening. That does it for this edition of the Hoosier Huddle podcast.